welcome to Monday Mentor with Jen. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict and personality clashes. And each week we come in with some practical leadership advice from all kinds of leaders because we all don't lead in one specific way. And so I'm really excited for our mentor today. Her name is Niki Hardy. She is a delight and a joy and has a really deep story to share with us today. She is an author. She's a podcaster. She is a host. She does all kinds of wonderful and fantastic things. So welcome our Monday mentor today, Niki.
Hi, Jen. Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're here. So I did say and mention to people that they will hear your British humor and British accent, but you do actually live in the States.
I do. I know. I live in the, I like to joke that I'm from the deep south of England, but we do actually live in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we're almost south, but
That's
I don't know where you technically are southern, but I'm southern England, so I fit in anywhere.
I don't venture into like who gets to decide where people live in the South. I'm a Midwesterner, and it does. Okay. So I don't know. I don't
that's above your pay grade.
That's right. Exactly. Hey, Ellen. And that reminds me, if you are here live, let us know that you're here. Say hello in the comments. If you are watching the replay, let us know you're watching the replay. We'll come back to questions if you've got one. Don't worry, we are here to help you. So, Niki, tell us a little bit about your leadership journey. We have so many different types of leaders on here. So tell us what you do to lead and how you see leadership in your life.
Yeah, so I have over the years, and of which there have been many, I have led in lots of different capacities. Everything from captaining lacrosse teams at school and university, right through to going into corporate leadership and then pastoring a church. And now I'm an author and a speaker. And so now what leadership looks like for me, it's kind of multifaceted insofar as I lead very different groups of people. So as an author, I am leading my readers and my audience on a journey. And for me, that looks like helping people discover that life doesn't have to be pain-free to be full, and then go and live it. Basically, that's what I try and help people do. And so I am always leading people in that direction. And then I also am a writing coach and work with an online writing community called Hope Writers, which is actually where we met. Yay. And so I'm a host for them. So I am often live like this, speaking with industry experts and leading the members of the community towards their goal of making progress with their writing. And that often looks like publishing. And so I am trying to think like them, which is often as I would think anyway, because I am a writer, and ask the right questions and lead the conversation and lead them. And then I'm obviously leading myself. I'm leading within my family and all sorts of other places. So, yeah.
Such a breadth of experience. And one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is because when we think about leading a team of people who said, hey, I want you to help me on this journey, that's slightly different than the team of people who are like, I show up here so I get a paycheck, except the skills are the same.
Yeah.
Because you're really trying to lead people on their own professional development journey. And that is a skill that I think every leader needs when we're leading a team inside an organization. If you are a coach, if you are leading people along a professional development journey, those skills of I want to listen to what you need so I can provide that information is really, really important.
I so agree, because Jen, sorry, just cutting you off, but when we're leading in a corporate capacity and we can help the people who we are leading feel seen and heard and help them come alive in their own work and in their own life, then they want to come to work and they want to show up and they want to be there for us and connect and be a team. And so it's just a win-win.
Absolutely. And that's so key. Like that's what employee engagement is about.
Yeah.
We're not, I get real wiggy when people say we're a family at work. Like I don't love that, but I do love that we're a community. I
Yeah.
love that we're a community of people. So Leslie and Ellen and Regina and people who are here live, I love that your life doesn't have to be pain free to be full.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that kind of leads me into my next question. You have had quite a difficult journey and
Mm.
leading yourself through a really big challenge. So I just want you to talk
Yeah.
about your journey and what that looked like in leading yourself through that process.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. So we moved our family from the UK over to Charlotte, North Carolina to come and plant a church. And that in itself was quite a difficult experience, you know, leaving. And then we had quite a few troubles when we got here. But woven in amongst that time was before we left, I lost my mum to cancer, small stage aggressive lung cancer. And I was living in Oxford, England, and she was in Vancouver, Canada. So we had this long distance, you know, it was difficult. And then we moved here. And 6 years after losing my mum, I lost my sister to the same thing, small cell aggressive lung cancer. And by this time, I was in Charlotte and she was back in the West Country in England. And but then just 6 weeks after losing Joe, who was just 43, 44, I was diagnosed. And mine, Jen, wasn't lung cancer like theirs. Mine was rectal cancer. And it was a bummer, literally. It felt like the family heat seeking missile of death had locked in on me, or more specifically, my rear end. And it was like, I just felt like I was next. And you can imagine what that did to our family as far as the kids were concerned. People who got cancer died and died quickly because that was their experience. And so, and we were leading a church. And what did that mean for us in our leadership role and all sorts of things? So, yeah, that's kind of what we came through. And it shaped us as a family, it shaped us as leaders. It challenged us in all those areas. And it's through that I had to work pretty hard to figure out how to live life to the full, even when it falls apart. Because I think what we do is we say, well, you know, especially as a Christian, you know, Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and life in all its fullness. And so we're like, yay. And we assume that is Facebook fabulous. And then life falls apart and we're like, oh, well, he also said we'd have storms. So these must be the storms. And my full abundant life must be off waiting for me in the future. The trouble is I didn't know whether I had a future that was better. And so I was like, maybe he didn't mean that they're separated in time and space. And maybe he didn't mean that an abundant life was all about having a perfect life and being happy, healthy, and wealthy and all those things. And so I had to discover what it really meant to live well when life falls apart. And it was challenging, but it was rewarding.
It's such an important story, and the lens I want to just like remind everybody who's listening is that you live a whole life. It's not like Niki got to do cancer over here and
Yeah.
leading over here.
Nope.
And the people, so you as a person, but also the people you are leading.
Yeah.
Mom gets a diagnosis, child has an accident, you have an accident, and you are
Yeah.
still coming to work every day. So that is a huge leadership challenge because it takes up so much energy, brain space, all of the things. I mean, I just booked
Yeah.
6 doctor's appointments for all of my kids, and I thought I was like, I needed to take a nap. I was like, I'm done. And
Yeah.
all of that takes so much work. So what advice would you give somebody who is in that experience? What was the thing or a thing, because there's not ever just one thing. What is a thing that you knew that you needed to do and something you wish your leaders could help you with?
Oh, that's great. I think one thing that we're really pleased that we did was be vulnerable from the front. And I don't mean that as in I'm so glad I fell apart, but we shared honestly where we were at, and we shared when it was difficult. So it wasn't a surprise. We didn't try and keep it all behind the scenes and say, well, Niki has cancer, but we're not going to talk about it. People were super helpful, and it's hard as a leader to express our weaknesses,
Yes.
our fears, accept help, all those sorts of things. And as a leader, you don't have to kind of say, oh, it's a nightmare and I'm falling apart, but it is okay if you do. If you get a difficult call at the office or something like that. But I remember, we spoke about it from the front, and and I remember, we had talked about it a number of times, and Al's my husband, and he was preaching, and as he was telling one of the a story in his sermon, and he said, and as you know, Niki has rectal cancer. And he said this from the front. And up until that point, I think we'd called it like colon cancer or colorectal cancer. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, dear Lord, he said rectal.
The words.
And everyone's now thinking about rectums, and it's mine. And I'm like, okay. We've all got them. We've all got elbows.
Two of my favorite kids' books are Everybody Poops and Everybody Farts.
Exactly. And so there is an element. And I think the other thing we're really glad we did is we used, it's how we process anyway, but use humor. So use both and make it okay to talk about.
Yes. I love that you're talking about being vulnerable with boundaries, because when you're like, we know something's going on. Yeah. We're all human, and we start to assume it's about us, or that there's something bad happening that is, of course, this was something bad, but like under the table bad happening. And so your vulnerability with boundaries is such a key piece of leading well when things aren't going well. So what is the thing that you needed from other people? Like, what's the thing we can give to others who are struggling in their life?
Other people that you are leading.
Yes.
Yeah. I think permission to be where they're at, encouragement that they are seen and heard, that it's not something that, they can't talk about that at work. But I think something else that's really helpful is a safe place to land, and support that if they do want to fall apart, talk more, that it's not just with anyone and everyone, that they know they can come to you, they know they can ask for support, that you are a safe place to say, actually, I need to talk to someone, and you might not be the right person, but, so that it's not the constant conversation in the office, but it is seen and heard and acknowledged, and they feel loved and supported by their community at work.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think one of the things that I just keep in my Monday Mentor and in the work that I do helping teams is that we have to acknowledge that we're whole people, that there is a space for things that aren't related to productivity, related to efficiency, because unless you're working with the robots that go through the store, that creep me out still at the grocery, we're working with people who have all of these different things. And so I love that idea of there is a space for you. And you can bring what you're willing to bring. And I think about different Enneagram types. So as an Enneagram teacher, so if you're new to the Enneagram, it is a personality framework that helps us understand why we think, act, and feel the way we do. And so there are some Enneagram types who are going to be like, no, that's private information, but Niki and I are both Enneagram 7. And Enneagram 7s are pretty much like, here's what's going on. But at the same time, we're going to run from pain. So how did you negotiate this? One of the deepest fears of an Enneagram 7 is being trapped in pain.
Yeah.
And you're kind of trapped in pain. What did you learn through that? Tell us about that.
Well, it's so true. And this is really where my work and my book all came out of this, Jen, because I realized, I'm a Brit. I've got a stiff and perfectly waxed upper lip. And it's like, I'm gonna survive. I'm a survivor, And then, I had chemo and radiation. I had surgery where they replumbed me, and I had an ostomy bag, and then I had more chemo and a port that was like having a piece of Lego permanently just above your boob. And it was like, I got to the point where surviving was all I was doing. And I was like, I am trapped in survival mode. And to your point, that's not a happy place for a 7. That is not a happy place for a 7.
It's literally the worst nightmare.
It is literally the worst nightmare. And so what then happened was, and at the same time, I'm thinking about this kind of theological conundrum of abundant life and storms and what's the deal with that, God? And then in an online cancer community, I met people who didn't call themselves cancer survivors, but cancer thrivers. And Jen, what was so wonderful is that they weren't denying that life was rubbish. They weren't denying that things were really hard. What they were saying was, I am jolly well going to get the most out of life, even in the midst of all that I'm going through. And there was something about it. I was like, I want that. There was something so inviting and enticing about it. And so I thought, well, I'm going to figure out how to thrive, not just survive. And so even in the midst of what I was going through, and that led me onto this journey of, how to discover that life doesn't have to be pain-free to be full. And most importantly, live it, because we can know it intellectually. But actually, what does that look like on the daily? Both in our own personal lives, when we're living in community. And you talked earlier about, we are a team, and you work with teams. And one of the things I discovered is that thriving is a team sport, and no one wins alone.
Yes.
No one wins alone. And so, we lead teams, but as leaders, we're still part of that team. The captain of a soccer team or a lacrosse team or whatever still plays. Then they are coach because they're coaching from inside the team. And so I had to really intentionally work at finding, as I say, the rubies in the rubble of my life, and they're there.
Yeah. I have heard you talk about this before. I have read things that you've written, and still just hearing you say it today, like I just have some goosebumps about it, because I think there is this innate idea that thriving has to be like, but there is a lightness to it when you talk about it that I think we all can latch on to, whether or not we've had what is literally so many people's greatest fear and walking through it, or just other things. Like my freshman at college son really busted his knee, and now he needs surgery, and it's really messed up his entire summer. He leaves for the UK in the fall. Is he going to be ready? Like, all of those things are happening for us, but like really thinking about how do we thrive through this is such a great question to ask. And I just appreciate that so
because
much.
It's so tempting to say, well, when this comes to an end, whatever it is that you're going through, when I get married, when I finally had kids, or when we're empty nesters, or when we finally launch this project, then we'll all be able to, like, life will be better. Or, oh my goodness, once we've hired someone, then we can, whatever and it's like, no, actually, how can we lead people into enjoying the work and doing the best work and being the best team through the hard stuff? Because, the last 2 years have told us that it can go on. And on.
And on and on. And so what do we do in the midst of that? And thank you so much for just these nuggets. And like Regina saying that, and Ryan saying that, finding those rubies in the rubble. And I say it every week. Oh my gosh, our time is up. I should probably stop. saying this is going to be 20 minutes and we just make it half an hour. But I'm so grateful for the wisdom that you brought us today. I think so many times we think about what it's like in the corporate world or what it's like as an entrepreneur, and we separate that from the fullness of who we are. And you couldn't. It was an impossible feat. And so how do you lead when our life is a whole thing and some of it's not going very well is such a gift to us. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
That. I really, really appreciate it. Okay, so as we wrap up, Niki wrote a whole book about this.
With toilet humor, Leslie.
Yes, that's right. So right here, you can grab that. Yes, Leslie. Oh, now I don't remember where Leslie is, but she's definitely British and lives in the UK. I want to say she lives in London, but I could be wrong.
That's where I'm from.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, where people can find you. Give us all the goods.
Yeah. So the book that I wrote is called Breathe Again, because we get into this when something bad happens, we either kind of go and we stop breathing,
we do,
or we're just like, you can't catch your breath. So it's called Breathe Again, How to Live Well When Life Falls Apart. It's available on Amazon and in England and all good places where it's sold. You can find me at nikihardy.com, and there are all sorts of resources and things there. And if you or a loved one have been diagnosed with cancer of some sort, there's resources on there. And I also have a podcast called Chemo Chair Prayers that I'm revamping, and I also have a devotional. So if you want something, a gift to give someone, and look, this is where it's at the moment. It's empty because it's being published in August, but you can pre-order it right now, and it's called 1 Minute Prayers for Women with Cancer. So I do that. I'm on Instagram. I'm all the places, but and like Jen, I'm a people person. Come and say hi and tell me that you saw me with Jen, and I'd love to get to know you.
Absolutely. Niki is a really fun follow on Instagram. Her kids do some really fun stuff. I always like following that part too. So thank you again for being with us today and just sharing parts of your journey with your joy and your thriving, and letting us just get that idea of how to live life to the full when it's not pain-free. And so we really, really appreciate that today.
You're welcome.
Oh, everybody, thank you for being with us. We will see you next week at noon or 1 p.m. Eastern here live. And make sure you grab Niki's book here and check out the pre-order for the new devotional as well. Yeah. And thank you again. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.